It started with a flat tire, a cold wind, and a man I barely knew holding out a wrench. He didn't say much, just offered help in the kind of silence that feels like safety. Funny, right? How the smallest gestures can hit you the hardest. Sometimes, the things that save you don't arrive like fireworks. Sometimes, they knock gently, and change everything. Be honest, has someone ever showed up for you in a way you never expected? The kind of help that came quietly, but meant everything? If that's ever happened to you, drop a sun behind small cloud in the comments. And hey, if you believe in unexpected kindness, maybe hit that subscribe button. You're in the right place. Every morning, it was the same rhythm. Tea. Email. Lesson plans. Water the orchids. Rinse. Repeat. I've lived on this cul-de-sac for 8 years. Tidy lawns, polite hellos, the occasional borrowed rake in spring. But real conversations? Connection? That stopped a long time ago. I usually started the day in my kitchen. Chamomile tea in a cracked mug, my laptop open to a muted video lecture. I'd tell my students, now, imagine Gatsby at the end of the novel, staring across the bay, and then I'd take a sip and glance outside, gray sky, leaves sticking to the windows. I've been a widow for 6 years now. 6 long, echo-filled, overly polite years. I still wear my husband's hoodie sometimes, not because I'm still grieving, but because it smells like what we used to be. My daughter Jada and I. Well, we don't talk much anymore. Some argument 3 years ago that snowballed into silence. And stubbornness. Mostly mine. I teach literature online. It pays the bills and lets me wear pajamas most of the day. Not glamorous, but hey, it's quiet. And quite used to feel safe. One day, I stepped outside with a potted plant to place on the porch. Magnolia Melendez, my neighbor, waved from across the street, smiling brightly with a Tupperware container in her hand. She's the type who always wears lipstick. Even when watering her lawn. Magnolia's sweet. One of those people who could talk to a brick wall and still walk away smiling. We wave. We nod. But I never really let her in. That night, I sat on the couch wrapped in an old blanket. The fireplace crackled, but the room still felt cold. Sometimes I'd scroll through old texts. Ones where Jada told me she loved me. Ones where I told her I didn't want her dating that guy Abel anymore. And then, nothing. Just space. I don't even know if I miss her or just miss being needed. My hand would always linger on the photo, me, Mark, and Jada at a pumpkin patch. Jada's eyes are full of light. My smile, forced. It started to rain outside. Lightly at first. I looked out the window again. A squirrel dashed across the driveway. I saw the front tire of my car slowly deflating. I sighed. It's funny how we can be surrounded by people, and still feel invisible. I had planned to run out and pick up a new bag of potting soil before the nursery closed. I grabbed my keys, threw on my raincoat, and jogged out the front door. But as soon as I slid into the driver's seat and turned the key, click. Again. Click. Nothing. Dead. Perfect. Of course. I groaned, threw my head back on the seat, and pulled out my phone to call for help. And then, there was a knock on the window. It startled me. I looked up and saw Joe Berg, gray hoodie, weathered ball cap, hands tucked in his coat pockets, motioning politely toward the hood of my car. I rolled the window down halfway. Hey, car trouble? Yeah, I think the battery's dead. Pop the hood. He didn't say much else. Just moved efficiently, like a guy who's done this 100 times. I hesitated, then did it. He propped the hood open and leaned in. Rain dripped from his cap. I barely knew him. Just a few nods at the mailbox. A smile here and there. He always looked busy. Or tired. Or both. He disappeared into his garage and came back with jumper cables and a small portable charger. Within minutes, the engine rumbled to life. "Should hold for now," he said. Then, like it was no big deal, he pulled a thermos from his coat pocket and handed it to me. "Hot cocoa. Figured you could use it." I stared at the thermos like it was a foreign object. "Cocoa? Yeah. I make a batch sometimes. Helps with the cold." I wrapped my fingers around it. Warm. No one had made me cocoa since my husband passed. He used to add cinnamon. Called it his secret ingredient. I always told him it tasted like Christmas and childhood. I took a sip. "This tastes like Christmas?" Joe asked with a smirk. I nodded, stunned. "That's the secret ingredient," he shrugged. We both chuckled softly. The kind of laugh that's more about recognition than humor. "Thanks, really," I said. "No problem," he nodded. Then he turned and walked away, back toward his garage. I watched him. But something caught my eye. A limp. Subtle. But real. He favored his right leg. Like he was used to hurting, but didn't want anyone to see. I stayed there holding the warm thermos, staring at the raindrops streaking across my windshield. And somehow, I felt warmer than I had in a long time. A couple days later, I was rinsing off my gardening gloves when I noticed my hose had been dragged over the fence and still had a little mud on it. Curious, I followed it around the gate and found a small cardboard box sitting just outside. It was neatly taped, with a handwritten note. "Thanks for the hose. You saved me a trip to Home Depot. Thought you might need these more than me. Joe." Inside? A box of polished brass screws. Ornamental. The kind you'd use for hanging wind chimes or fixing drawer knobs. I didn't need the screws. But I kept them anyway. After that, I started noticing Joe more. He was always out, but never loud. Sitting in his garage with a paperback, feeding 2 stray tabby cats, or slowly carving something out of wood. I think it was a birdhouse. Maybe 5 or 6 in progress at once. It was like he was building something, even if he didn't know what for. Once I saw him, I couldn't unsee him. He was everywhere. Not loud, not attention-seeking. Just present. Doing things people don't do anymore. One evening, he knocked on my door with a half-finished birdhouse. "You know how to paint?" he asked. I laughed. Enough to embarrass myself. "Why?" Thought it'd be more fun than doing it alone. We sat on my porch steps and painted the little house together. We laughed when the chimney went crooked and the shutters smeared. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. He told me about his divorce. Said she was a good woman, just not his forever. I told him about Mark. About the trip to Ireland we never got to take. About chemo. The hospice nurse. The final silence. We didn't cry. But we sat in that soft, heavy kind of quiet. The kind you don't fill with small talk. Later that night, I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. It was a number I still knew by heart. Jada. "Hey. I know it's been a while. I need a place to crash. Just for a few days. That's okay?" My breath caught. I played the message again. And again. The ghosts in my house weren't just in the frames. They lived in the silence between me and my daughter. I stared at the old photo of us on the mantel, arms around each other, but now feeling like strangers. And I knew, whatever was happening between me and Joe, it was just beginning. Jada showed up the next day. She didn't call. Didn't text. Just a car door slamming and footsteps up the porch. I peeked through the curtain and there she was, hoodie up, duffel bag over her shoulder, face blank. Like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't even wait for me to say anything. I know it's last minute. I just didn't know where else to go. I stood there for a beat too long. Then stepped aside. "You're here now. That's what matters." She dropped her bag by the couch and rubbed her arms, like she was trying to shake off something invisible. "Guest rooms are still yours," I said. "Thanks." No hug. No smile. Just this tight little exchange wrapped in politeness. She looked like a storm survivor, windblown, scattered, a little lost. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Like someone had dimmed her from the inside. That night, I found her sitting alone at the kitchen table, scrolling her phone, then flipping it over like it had betrayed her. Her knee bounced under the table. She jumped at every sound. She picked at her cuticles until they bled. I walked in slowly with a folded towel. "You okay?" She shrugged. "Fine." "You don't look fine." She let out a sharp breath. "Not angry. Just tired." He cheated. Again. Then told me it was my fault. That I was emotionally unavailable. Whatever the hell that means. She didn't cry. Just stared at the salt shaker like it had something to answer for. He said I was lucky anyone even loved me. God. I set the towel down gently, like anything louder might break her. "That's not love, Jada." She looked up at me. And for the first time in years, we really saw each other. The next morning, a soft knock at the door. "Joe." He stood there holding a book. "Thought she might like this. Helped me once." He handed it to me. "The body keeps the score." Inside, a sticky note. "Healing takes time. Start here. J." Later that day, I found Jada clutching it. Not reading yet. Just holding it like something solid. That evening, I brought her a cup of tea and sat on the edge of her bed. "I wasn't a perfect mom," I said, "no intro, no build-up." She didn't flinch. "You didn't have to be perfect. I just wanted you to show up." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I didn't know how. Then the tears came. Both of us. Different reasons. Same ache. We held each other. Clumsy. Quiet. But real. You never expect the biggest breakdown to happen over tea and overdue apologies. But there we were, two women, bruised by different men, learning how to forgive the same silence. That night, I looked out the front window and my stomach dropped. Abel. He was standing at the gate. Hoodie. Smirk. Cigarettes tossed on my walkway. He didn't yell. Didn't move. But before I could even grab the doorknob, Joe was already outside. Calm. Steady. Slow. He walked straight up to the gate and stood face to face with Abel. "You're not welcome here." Abel laughed. Bitter and hollow. "You the boyfriend or the guard dog?" Joe didn't flinch. "Both. If I need to be." A long stare. Then Abel backed up slowly, like he didn't have the guts for what he came for. Joe turned and looked up at my window. He nodded once. Solid. Steady. And in that moment, I realized something. Joe never raised his voice. He never made promises. He just stood his ground. And that? That was the kind of protection I didn't know I'd needed until now. The day after Abel showed up, Jada barely left her room. She just sat on the floor flipping through that book Joe gave her, not reading, really. Just letting the pages sit open while her thoughts unraveled around her. I walked in with a dish towel still in my hands. "You want tea?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "No." "But, can you just sit?" It was the smallest task. And somehow, it made my heart race. I nodded and lowered myself beside her on the rug, careful not to say too much. She spoke after a while. Almost like the words had to climb out of her. "He never hit me, you know." So I kept telling myself it wasn't abuse. But, he'd take things. Twist things. Make me question my memory. My sanity. Then he'd do something sweet. Like buying a book I mentioned once. And I'd think, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm too much. Her hands trembled. She clutched the edge of her hoodie like it was the only thing anchoring her. One time, he went through my messages. Accused me of flirting with my friend from college. Then cried in the hallway, saying he was just scared to lose me. I didn't say anything. Just let her keep going. He knew exactly how to make me feel small, without ever raising his voice. Then she looked up at me, her cheeks flushed, eyes glassy. I didn't leave him. He left me. And part of me was relieved. That's the worst part. I took a shaky breath. I don't know what to say, except I'm so sorry. That I wasn't there. That I didn't ask sooner. She shrugged. We were both just trying to survive, I guess. She wasn't wrong. I used to swear I'd never turn into my mother, I told her. She had this way of using silence like punishment. And somewhere along the way, I became her. I stopped showing affection because I thought it made me look weak. Truth is, I was scared. Of losing you. Of needing anyone. We sat there. No performance. No power struggle. Just two women unspooling years of silence, one thread at a time. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. Magnolia. She walked in holding a towel-wrapped pot like it was sacred. Chicken tortilla soup, she said. My healing from heartbreak special. She stopped when she saw us. Jada on the floor. Me beside her. The space between us is finally gone. Huh, Magnolia smiled gently. Something's different here. She set the pot down and kissed me on the cheek. You look like you finally exhaled. That evening, another knock. Joe. He stood there with something behind his back. A wooden box. Simple. Sand smooth. A sunflower carved into the top with delicate vines spiraling out. The hinges gleamed. Made this for your daughter, he said. Thought it might help her feel safe. Or at least like someone sees her. I took it, stunned. Joe, it's beautiful. She'll love it. Jada stepped forward, hesitant. Did you carve this? He nodded. It's really nice. Thank you. He didn't say anything else. Just gave a small smile and turned to head back toward his porch. Jada clutched the box to her chest, not like a gift, but like armor. As the door clicked shut, I watched her run her fingers over the sunflower. And I realized. It wasn't a rescue. No grand declarations. No magic fix. Just a box. A book. A bowl of soup. A reminder that healing isn't loud. Sometimes, it whispers through cracked doors and kindness. The next morning felt different. The silence wasn't so heavy anymore. It was restful. I stood in the kitchen, paint-streaked robe tied loosely, a steaming mug in my hand. For the first time in years, I stared at a blank canvas propped against the far wall, and didn't look away. I dipped my brush in soft blue and made a single stroke. Then another. Not perfect. Not planned. Just instinct. I hadn't painted since Mark passed. But that morning, something inside me whispered, you're allowed to create again. Meanwhile, Jada had started tying her hair up in a bun, pulling on a hoodie, slipping out of the house with a small journal clutched to her chest. She told me she was helping out at the women's shelter downtown, folding clothes, sorting food, keeping toddlers busy while mothers filled out paperwork. She didn't say much about it. But every time she came back, her posture looked a little stronger. Her face a little softer. She said it helped, being somewhere people didn't look at her like she was broken. Just needed. One evening, I wandered across the street to Joe's garage. The door was open, amber light spilling onto the pavement. He was sanding the arm of a wooden bench. Simple. Beautiful. Unfinished. I stood there in the doorway until he glanced over and gave a quiet nod. I stepped inside. We didn't talk for a while. Just sat in silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Eventually, he put down the sander and wiped his hands. "Have you ever noticed," he said, "how some people avoid mirrors? Not because they're scared of what they'll see, but because they're scared someone else might really look." I turned to him slowly, the words hitting harder than I expected. "You mean, we're not afraid of being alone? We're afraid of being seen?" He nodded. "Exactly." My voice cracked just a little as I said, "Then thank you for seeing me." He handed me a brush. "Help me stain the bench?" So we did. Quietly. Side by side. Arms occasionally brushing. Fingers slipping past each other on accident, then not moving away. We stained the wood that night. But it held more than polish. It held healing. Conversation. A second chance. And something told me, it wouldn't be the last thing we'd build together. Healing doesn't always shout its arrival. Sometimes it just hands you a paintbrush, or a hammer, or a place to sit. And quietly asks, "Are you ready now?" The morning after we finished the bench, sunlight poured through the kitchen window like it belonged there. I stood barefoot, sipping coffee, hair messily tied up, watching the light dance across my half-finished painting. The one I was no longer afraid to start. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Jada. She walked into the room in fitted slacks and a crisp button-up shirt. Her hair was pinned back. Clean. Professional. Confidence. "You look prepared," I said. She smiled faintly. "I've got a job interview. Local nonprofit." "The shelter recommended you?" She nodded. "Yeah. They said I've got away with people." I paused, holding her gaze. "You always did," I said quietly. She nodded back, and there it was, that unspoken understanding. No flashy reconciliation. Just something true. She grabbed her bag, headed toward the door, then paused. Turned back. Smiled. And then she was gone. I stood in the doorway watching her go, my hand pressed lightly to my chest. Later that day, I looked out the window and saw Joe pushing something across the street on a dolly cart. The bench. Sturdy. Golden brown. Smooth armrests. And carved into the back, just one word. Here. He rolled it under the tree in my front yard. The one that turned crimson in October. My favorite. I stepped outside. "What's this?" I asked, arms crossed against the breeze. He shrugged. "Looked like that spot needed a place to rest." "You built it for me?" He didn't answer. Just brushed off a few wood shavings and stepped back. I lowered myself onto the bench, slowly, my fingertips running across the carved word. Here. Present. Safe. Chosen. And as I sat there, the breeze tugging gently at my sweater, I thought. He never said the words. Not really. But every screw in that bench. Every cup of cocoa. Every silent glance across a paintbrush or a pot of soil. They were all his way of saying, "You matter." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I sat there on that bench, his bench, under my favorite tree, as the morning light filtered through the leaves. No noise. No big moments. Just peace. I opened the book while sitting in my lap. The one Joe gave Jada. Inside, the sticky note was still there. Healing takes time. Start here. I smiled. Not the polite kind. The real kind. The kind that starts behind your eyes and settles in your chest. And I looked up, right at you. Because I want you to know something. Some people crash into your life like fireworks. Loud. Bright. Impossible to ignore. Others, th.